Hey, 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 what's happening, guys? What's going on YouTube? You guys have tuned into Rules for Rebels, and today we're going to be sharing an article with you that I discovered through Reddit. The article is from salon.com, and the article is titled DoorDash Drivers Make an Average of $1.45 per hour, an analysis finds. So I thought this was interesting just because the gig economy is a hot topic right now. There's a lot of people trying to make extra money in the gig economy. A lot of YouTube channels popping up that are all about DoorDash, Instacart, Uber, Lyft. And we've seen studies like this before, right? Like I've seen a lot of studies that say the average Uber driver makes less than a minimum wage, and Uber Eats drivers don't make any money. This gig economy doesn't make any money. But I know a lot of people are interested in this. A lot of people are involved in the gig economy. And so I thought this was an interesting article. Wanted to share it with you guys. Here's my take on gig economy jobs as a whole. And one thing that kind of annoys me is how entrepreneurs and side hustlers and the gig economy kind of get lumped into the same bucket. Like, I fill out a lot of Haro pitches and things like that. Haro help a reporter out. A lot of reporters are looking for quotes on stories. And the gig economy is a popular topic for stories, whether they're talking about that HB 55 or whatever that California law is that's going to affect a lot of freelancers outside of the gig economy. And I just see lots of other things like, do you have a side hustle in the gig economy? Do you have a side hustle doing this? Like, to me, a side hustle is something that you start outside of your 9-to-5 job with little to no money and not a lot of risk. And one of the things that really makes a side hustle in my mind is you're actually starting a business. You're starting something that at least has the potential to be scalable, right? And by scalable, I mean, okay, you buy a couple things off AliExpress and you throw them up on eBay or Amazon and you see if they sell. And if it fails, so what? You move on. If it succeeds, well, next time order 10 units instead of 5 units. The next time order 20 units instead of 10 units. These things have it doesn't have to be e-commerce. It can be starting a garage cleaning business, starting a dog walking business. To me, a side hustle is something that has the potential to scale, and something that doesn't have the potential to scale is driving Uber, right? Like the chances of you starting your own taxi company are pretty much zero. Plus, the taxi company business is kind of like a dying business to begin with. Delivering groceries for Instacart, you're pretty much reliant on their customers and their app. There's really not much of a chance for that to scale and turn into your own business or turn into something larger. So that's just kind of a pet peeve of mine, is when people intertwine entrepreneurship or actually hustle, side hustles with the gig economy. But like I said, we've seen a lot of stories like this talking about the gig economy. In the Reddit post that I discovered this article in, there's a lot of people in there who are like, bullshit, $1.45 per hour. I made $25 for a 20-minute delivery the other day. I'm making $20 an hour. I'm making $25 an hour. I think a lot of people fail to figure in, the wear and tear on their car, gas, all that other stuff. Another thing I think a lot of people fail to factor in is the time just sitting around waiting. If you sit around for 20 minutes waiting to get a DoorDash order, and then you do the DoorDash order in 20 minutes and you make X amount of money, like, you have to factor in unless you value your time at nothing, which I hope you don't, you have to factor in that time. Anyhow, let's get right on into this article. The national minimum wage of $7.25 an hour has not changed in a decade, and there's widespread agreement that it's far below what constitutes a living wage in any way. Now, this is kind of interesting to me, right? I had kind of the knee-jerk reaction of saying, well, minimum wage isn't intended for somebody to be able to raise a family on, right? Like, minimum wage is meant for, I kind of started kind of parroting that talking point myself. And so I just happened to Google, what is the purpose of minimum wage? The purpose of, and again, this is from Cornell Law. I don't know what the official definition of minimum wage is. I don't think the official definition of minimum wage actually gets to what the purpose of it is. But anyhow, the first thing that pops up in a featured snippet here on Google, the purpose of minimum wage is to stabilize the post-depression economy and protect workers in the labor force. The minimum wage was designed to create a minimum standard of living to protect the health and well-being of employees. So, I don't know if that's saying that at the very least a single person should be able to survive on it. I got my calculator open. Let's run some rough numbers. So if you work 40 hours a week, times, what do we say, $7.25 an hour, that comes to $290 times 4, which comes to $11.60. That's before taxes. Could you live on $11.60 a month? I think minimum wage here in Chicago is higher. I guess it really depends on the area of the country. I had an apartment in college that was $180 a month for a one-bedroom apartment. This was in a college town here in Illinois. So in that sense, if I was making $7.25 an hour, my apartment cost me, this was a few years back, so we'll say it's like $220 now. But that still leaves quite a bit of money in the Chicago suburbs or Chicago. I would say like renting a room on the low end $400, on I guess on the high end it could go up pretty high. But renting a room, we'll say $500. Pretty much half your income's going to housing. Then you're probably maybe you don't have a car, but you're going to need a bus pass or a train pass. Plus food, like that'd be kind of tough to get by. Getting a little bit sidetracked here, but that sentence there, what constitutes a living wage, and I kind of caught myself parroting that minimum wage isn't intended to be a living wage, but maybe it is. I don't know. If any of you guys know more about the purpose of minimum wage, I'd love to hear it. I wouldn't be surprised if Icarus knows. He tends to know about everything. So Icarus, man, fill us in on what the purpose of the minimum wage is. As if the statistics on the federal minimum wage weren't dismal enough, leave it to Silicon Valley to figure out innovative ways to pay workers even less. A new in-depth quantitative study released this week as part of a worker campaign in collaboration with the Workers' Rights nonprofit Working Washington found that contract delivery workers for food delivery company DoorDash earn $1.45 per hour on average after the other expenses are accounted for. DoorDash is an on-demand prepared food delivery service. The basic premise is that the company's contract delivery drivers or dashers deliver food to customers who order on the mobile app. Similar to Uber drivers or TaskRabbit workers, the company advertises that by becoming a dasher, you can be your own boss and enjoy the flexibility of choosing when, where, and how much you earn. I wouldn't say you're your own boss working for gig economy things, but great way to market it, I suppose. Working Washington crunched pay data from 229 delivery jobs from dashers around the United States and found that the workers were making an average of $1.45 per hour after taking into account the cost of mileage, additional payroll taxes that add up for independent contractors, and the lost work time as workers wait for the next job. All of that data was from November and December 2019, after the company implemented a new pay model. The estimates made in the study don't take into account the cost of paying for public insurance benefits. They only factor in work expenses beyond mileage and payroll taxes, which means the real wages may be even more depressing. The report states nearly a third of DoorDash jobs actually pay less than $0 after accounting for these basic expenses. Just 11% of jobs pay more than the federal minimum wage of $7.25 an hour after expenses, and only 2% meet the standard of $15 an hour plus expenses. Further, jobs with higher tips still tend to include lower pay. The set of jobs with tips less than $1 pay 1.8 times as much as those jobs with tips more than $8 on a gross hourly basis. In November 2019, DoorDash claimed its new pay model would result in gross hourly earnings of more than $18, but as the report explains, it's unclear what qualifies as gross earnings. The company has declined to disclose how much of that gross amount is tips, how much is paid from the company, how many miles workers drive, and thus much mileage expense they incur, what periods of time they consider to be part of active hour, or other details and costs involved in achieving that reported level of gross earnings. What it boils down to is that DoorDash has created a pay model in which workers appear to be making a decent wage on paper, but which after expenses is barely more than zero. Worse, only 11% of DoorDash jobs paid above the U.S.'s laughable federal minimum wage, yet DoorDash's manipulative exploitation of its workers is evidently a great business model, and its investors, according to CNBC, DoorDash seized 1/3 of the digital food delivery sales in the U.S. market in 2019. California's recently passed Assembly Bill 5, that's what it is, AB 5, not AB 55, is meant to protect gig workers such as these by defining the scope of when and where a contractor can be used and incentivizing companies to transition to salaried workers. Yet rather than accede, companies like DoorDash and Uber are ruthlessly fighting against the bill, taking measures to make clear that their gig workers are independent contractors. Uber recently announced it would give drivers more control over their rides, a change that sounds freeing on paper, but which is designed to let drivers skirt the law so they can be more clearly defined as contractors. Now, I don't follow Uber super closely. I do follow a couple rideshare drivers, and I sort of kind of stay up on the industry just because all this like gig economy work kind of does ultimately wind up affecting like freelancers and side hustlers. This AB Law 55 is actually being criticized by a lot of freelancers, not people who drive for Uber or DoorDash or anything else, but people who actually do freelance website design, freelance graphic design, freelance copywriting. Maybe somebody else, Icarus, I bet you Icarus knows about this. Sorry, I had to take my bubbly there. I believe the AB5 law states something about like as far as being more geared towards like contract workers, like graphic designers, web designers. I think you can only do like 30 or 35 jobs for a company per year before they have to put you on payroll. Somebody correct me on that if I'm wrong, but I had seen a couple articles and a couple anecdotal stories where people were saying, basically, I'm a graphic designer, I'm a web designer, I'm a freelance writer, and companies are starting to shy away from using me, or companies are telling me they can only work with me, 30 times per year, which may sound like a lot, but in the grand scheme of things, I mean, you write 3 articles a month for one company, one website, one entity, and you've pretty much, that's 12, 24, 36. So yeah, at that point, you write 3 articles a month for a company, you do 3 graphic design projects a month for a company, and now you're no longer allowed to work for them as a freelancer. They have to bring you on full time. So, this kind of does go above and beyond the Ubers and Grubhubs, and it kind of does start to affect other people's livelihoods. Let's see. Uber recently announced it would, okay. Oh, this is another thing I heard about. If any of you guys are Uber drivers or keep up on Uber more, let me know. But I believe one of the big criticisms a lot of people had about Uber was like, I want to know where I'm going and what a job is paying before I take a ride. And I drove Uber for one day. I don't know if you guys remember this. I think it was probably last December, maybe last January. I hear everybody talking about Uber. It wasn't something I planned on really doing regularly, but I was like, I'm going to get out there and see what this is all about, see how this works. So I signed up for the Uber app, and in one afternoon, I said, I got nothing going on. I finished doing a couple freelance writing pieces, worked on my blog a little bit, put out a YouTube video, had the rest of the afternoon free. I was like, I'm going to hop on the Uber app and just kind of see what this is all about. So I wind up doing 1 or 2 rides around town. I remember I picked one guy up at a bar, took him over to his second job at La Michoacan, this Mexican ice cream shop, which is pretty good. Dropped him off there. I think I maybe had another short ride, and then I have another ride. So I drive over, and I pull into this driveway, and this girl and her mom come out. The girl's got a bunch of bags. I'm like, where the fuck are we going? Well, a second later, I see it pop up on my screen. At the time, I'm out in Villa Park. I'm out in the west suburbs. I had to meet up with my girlfriend later. Her folks live out there. And so I was out in Villa Park, and all of a sudden I see this ride is taking me to like the Gold Coast. So Gold Coast is right off of Lakeshore Drive, not north end of Chicago, but a little bit north of downtown. Basically the last place you want to go around rush hour. And as I'm sitting in the driveway watching this girl bring her bags out, I'm like, what the fuck, man? I'm like, I don't want to go to Chicago, right? Like, it's going to be 45 minutes to an hour there, depending on traffic, plus that back in rush hour, plus, Lakeshore Drive that time of night is just insane, tons of traffic. And so, I was like, I guess I'm already here. I can't really ditch her. But that, I never really realized that at the time. I'd never driven Uber before, and I never even really took Ubers that much. And so it really kind of threw me. I'm like, wow, this is fucking crazy. Like, I literally just planned on doing a couple rides around town for 30 minutes, an hour, and then heading back home. And I didn't realize that you don't know where your Uber ride is going to be taking you. And I mean, shit, man, there's people, I'm in Chicago, but there's people who go up to Wisconsin. There's people who go down to Champaign, Illinois, by the University of Illinois. Literally an Uber ride could take you anywhere. And, sure, I think the long rides pay a little bit more, but now you got an empty car and God knows how long of sitting in the car driving back. If you drive somebody down to Champaign, Illinois, that's 2.5 hours south of Chicago. You got a 2.5 hour ride back, which is 2 hours of your wasted time, plus wear and tear on your car, plus gas. So I think Uber's kind of trying to skirt around this UB50 or this AB55 by, let's try to make these drivers more contractors. So, okay, before we wouldn't tell them where they're going. Well, what's something a contractor do? Contractors have the freedom to take jobs that they want to take or decline jobs that they don't want to take. So I think Uber kind of figures we'll kind of give people some more privileges, give them a few more things that contractors get. We won't pay them anymore, but we'll give them a few of these perks. And then maybe when it comes to fighting this law, like, hey, our drivers can pick and choose what jobs they want to take. Like this, what job lets you pick and choose what tasks you want to do? Like, we're not an employer. So anyhow, kind of a long ramble there, but that was kind of my brief experience with Uber. So let's see, we talked about Uber recently announced it would give drivers more control over their rides, a change that sounds freeing on paper, but which is designed to let drivers skirt the law so they can be more clearly defined as contractors. In October 2019, the CEO of Dash slammed the California law. It would have disastrous results if it's implemented because it's trying to impose an imperfect solution into a very big problem, said Tony Zhu. The net impact of AB5 would be a lot of lost economic opportunity and income for the state of California. So ultimately, at the end of the day, here's my take on things like Uber and Lyft, right? Like, I wish Uber and Lyft were around when I was in college. Like, if I needed a couple bucks to go out drinking on Friday night or to go to a party, or I needed some gas money to go home after a break, I think something like Uber or Lyft would have been pretty cool, right? Like, I'm probably not making money. The way I view Uber and Lyft is you're essentially taking a cash advance out in your car. You're probably making little to no money, but if you need money in a pinch, that's a way for you to earn some easy money in a pinch. And like I said, if I was, there were times when I couldn't come home over certain breaks at school. I remember I stayed over one Easter break. I stayed over one Christmas break. Just because I didn't have the gas money to drive back. So in those situations, I would have went out for a couple hours, drove Uber, drove Lyft, made a couple bucks, and had gas money to go back home. If I wanted money to buy a bag of weed or go out drinking on Friday night, that would have been a great way to scrape up a little bit of money. So I think Uber has a place, right? Like if your roommate moves out, you're short $300 on rent, and you got to come up with that money within a week. I think these are all great use cases for Uber and Lyft, but to actually rely on it for a full-time income, let alone even a part-time income, in my opinion, isn't really a wise decision. If any of you guys drive Uber, Lyft, DoorDash, Uber Eats, any of that stuff, and your experience has been better than this, I'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment below. Let us know how you're doing. One kind of gig economy thing that I recently heard about that I think might maybe be a little bit more lucrative than Uber and Lyft, where, Uber and Lyft, you're beating the shit out of your car 24/7, right? You got people spilling in your car, puking in your car, peeing in your car, God knows what else in your car, and pretty much the entire job is driving, right? I don't know too much about this. My girlfriend had mentioned the other day, I'd never even heard of this service before, but my girlfriend had mentioned the other day that one of her girlfriend's boyfriend, he's a chef, but he's out of work at the moment. And I guess he was driving for something called Instacart. They live in Bucktown. So he drives for Instacart a couple days a week. I guess to keep some money coming in. And what Instacart is a service where basically I think you pay. I'm getting off on a big tangent here. It sounded like an interesting service to me at first to use as a customer. And then I was like, I think maybe it's kind of fucking stupid. I don't know. If any of you guys have used it, let me know. But Instacart, I believe it costs $99 a year. So it's kind of like an Amazon Prime. You pay $99 a year and you get free grocery delivery. Now, you're supposed to tip. You should tip. Obviously, you're not required to tip. Instacart, at least near me here in Chicago, your choices of grocery stores or places to shop, you got Mariano's, I think Whole Foods, Trader Joe's, Aldi, Jewel Osco, and I think there's like Petland or PetSmart, one of those pet stores. And you pay your $99 a year. You can get free grocery delivery. You order groceries through the app. You do have to commit to one store. So it's not like I want a steak from Mariano's and I want Cheerios from Jewel and I want, you do have to commit to one store. Some stores do have certain order minimums, like you got to spend at least $35, but most of them don't. With the exception of Costco, none of these stores mark up their prices. So if a box of Cheerios is $3.99 at Jewel Osco, it's $3.99 on the app. I do believe that Costco marks up their prices, so you're paying a higher price through this app. But basically, you can order your groceries online. Now, why is this kind of cool? I don't really mind grocery shopping, right? Like, I don't necessarily mind taking the time to go grocery shopping. What's kind of a pain in the ass to me is, like, if I want to make some certain recipe and, like, I need basil and I need pink Himalayan sea salt and I need, one cherry tomato and one, like, I hate going around the grocery store trying to find things. Like, things are laid out poorly. I don't know where they keep certain things. So to be able to sit down and say, okay, I want to make this recipe and just hop on an app and get all these weird ingredients that I need, as opposed to like running laps around the grocery store and asking the stock boy who sends me to the wrong aisle. That part of it was kind of attractive. I have a cousin who did the 14-day trial. She actually just recently mentioned it to me as well. She did the 14-day trial and she's like, oh my gosh, it's the greatest thing ever. She's got a couple kids, so I'm sure grocery shopping for her is a nightmare. It's probably well worth it for her. Her and her husband both work. Obviously, they got a couple kids. I thought about trying it. I actually signed up for the 14-day trial, although I think my trial has expired and I still haven't ordered anything. Anyhow, despite all this rambling, I thought, like, if you are somebody who's looking for a gig economy type hustle, I thought that one seemed a little bit more interesting, just because you're not just showing up at the grocery store, picking up the food, like, from the front counter and leaving. Like, you actually have to go around the store and pick out people's groceries for them. So part of the time you're being paid for is actually your time shopping, and your time shopping is time that you're not wasting gas or putting wear and tear in your car. So in that sense, that's, I guess, kind of one positive thing. Like, with a lot of these gig economy jobs, if you want to call them that, even though you're not being paid well, period, across most of them, at the very least, at least some of them, you're not having to beat up your car the whole time and put mileage on your car and waste gas. So that might be something to check out. I've kind of gone way off topic and started rambling here, so I'm going to cut the video here. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. If you're not subscribed to the channel, go ahead and hit that subscribe button down below. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll catch you on the next video.